A resolution opposing proposed taxes for technology and computer services in Philadelphia.
Chair recognizes Councilman O.
Thank you very much. I move for adoption of the resolution.
It's been moved and properly second. Before we take the vote, I have to recognize we have Councilman Greenlee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'll be voting no on this resolution and urge other members to vote no. And it's not because I necessarily support the tax. I understand some of the arguments that were used in public comment. None of us like taxes. But I think we all know how difficult it is here in the city to put together a budget. And I would argue, and I think our colleagues that were former members of the House would concur that it probably is even more difficult in Harrisburg. This proposal by Governor Wolf, and that's what it is right now, and as we know in budgets, things change, things are used as negotiations, whatever. It's just part of the whole budget process, and remember, part of the reason for it, as I understand, and I'm far from an expert on this, is to try to take care of a huge deficit that the state has. And sometimes we have to make difficult decisions. We have to make them all the time. We certainly had to make them last year when we voted on the soda tax, which a lot of us necessarily didn't like, but we felt it was the thing we had to do to fund the programs that it was going to fund. So I think it is not in our place, in my opinion, to take a position on a piece of Governor Wolf's budget, something that he and the legislature is trying to put together up there. And again, I don't believe a no vote on this resolution is in support of the tax. It is basically opposing getting involved and taking a vote on a piece of the whole budget process that's gone on up there. I don't think we would necessarily like legislators, and although they do it a lot, take positions on stuff we do down here. So I don't think we could criticize them for doing that to us, and then we do that to them. So I would urge a no vote on this, again, not in support of the tax, but against taking a position on a piece of the governor's budget. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Don.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to share a few facts on this because I am in favor of voting for this resolution, even though I'm a Democrat. Pennsylvania Economy League did a report recently that 25% of all jobs in Philadelphia in the last 14 years were in technology. 25% of all jobs in Philadelphia last 14 years, technology. It also said that 1/3 of those jobs don't require a high school diploma. And the message this sends is wrong to the 100,000 millennials that have moved here in the last 10 years, and the fact that Philadelphia has the highest percentage of millennial growth of the largest 20 cities in the country in the past 12 months sends the wrong message. The other statistics we should be aware of is the economic job multiplier of technology. It's 5 to 1. There's no other industry that's higher. For every job of tech, 5 more jobs get created. And in the Pennsylvania Economy Report, it said the average income of tech is $39,000 higher. But I think the big piece here is the message this is sending. I understand the governor's situation, but I don't agree that we should put a 6% tax on the back of the one area of Philadelphia that's booming right now, and we're attracting young people here, and we want them to stay here in the city. So for that reason, I'd be voting in favor of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Council President. This is a difficult vote. I understand, and I'm going to thank Councilman Greenlee for his comments in reference to budget process. We all know that a budget's not done in isolation. It's hard to just pick out one piece of legislation that a body is trying to do. However, when you think about the impact this legislation would have, if it was more of a broad-based impact, I would have less of a concern. However, this legislation is going to disproportionately impact the city of Philadelphia if it were to go into effect. And if you think about the fact that we have a high rate of poverty in this city and some of the issues we're trying to address, it just concerns me that this type of proposal could go through and have this type of impact on our city. I do understand the issues and concerns that Councilman Greenlee has articulated and some of the other issues along with this legislation. I just think that this proposal will have a significant impact here in the city of Philadelphia. And so in that regard, I do have a concern with some of the arguments articulated by Councilman Greenlee and others in reference to their no vote. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I also want to echo and share some of Councilman Green and Greenlee's, considerations when, we're talking about the, separation of the city, the sovereignty of the city budget and the state budget. And, the difficulty, all right, that I find, and you with more experience in city government and being council president and other members here, understanding that the timing of our budget is, that is finalized and voted on prior to the state's budget really kind of puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage. But they have their challenges, and some of our members or colleagues and friends here understands that completely with their experience and understands the challenges that they have to deal with. 203 members, that's just on the House side, and then you have a Democratic governor. We're relying on veto power. We have major issues here in the city of Philadelphia that we rely on the state on. Right now we have the bifurcation of the constitutional change with our real estate taxes. We have education funding, all right? Having a lawsuit that's in the federal courts of fair education funding and relying on the state to really, fund our schools with a little more money so we can educate our kids. We have a uniform construction code that hasn't been adopted when we were operating off of 2009 building codes. While we have this economic boom, all right, we're outdated by many years, from 2009, and here we are in 2017, so we rely on the state and the cooperation with the state. The state hasn't been able to come up with a way that they can tax, the shale, all right, and Marcellus gas, all right, which would generate things. And there's all kinds of things that are going on in this state. And it puts us in a precarious position, all right, because I don't believe, I do not personally support the tax, all right, on our tech companies, all right, but we have to make a tough decision whether we support our Democratic governor when it comes to leverage, all right, and I'm going to be voting no on this resolution, even though I personally don't support it, because I believe that we need the governor to govern, all right, after our city budget is complete, for him to continue to fight, all right, to make sure that our codes are updated, which are not now, to make sure that, even though tech is the fastest growing sector, all right, it's even faster growing sector when it comes to the healthcare industry. It's really growing there, all right, that he considers, or the legislature considers, all right, exempting the cities of the first class from anything that is going to be onerous, because we're going to take a look at that. With your creation of a special committee on regulatory laws that we have in our city, which has been outdated and used and not used and so forth, I think we need to really take a hard look at leveraging, giving the governor leverage, all right? But the city of Philadelphia wants something back in return, all right? And it's not a quid pro quo. It is, hey man, we're 2009 codes, all right? More funding for education, and giving the city of the first class a little more sovereignty when it comes to some of our bifurcation of our real estate taxes, so we can use those resources that will attract and retain millennials, business folks, and how about just city residents right here in the city of Philadelphia. So difficult vote, but we're going to have to take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
So, this is a straw vote that has no power to determine what happens about 103 miles from here, right? No, it doesn't, right? We don't have any power over the governor's budget. So why, wait a minute, hold on, I'm talking. Then push your button, and push your button, and push your button, all right? All right, wait a minute. So wait a minute. I know we do it all the time, but I just watched us 8-hour struggle yesterday about rebuild, right? And we were pulling our hair out. I think we've become addicted to doing this kind of stuff, particularly where we don't have a say in it. And so I want to just point out to you that the governor's coming here tomorrow to talk about the I-95 ramp that will connect into Queen Village, where these millennials live, right? Isn't that where these millennials live? And he's bringing a check to do that, right? So I'm just saying, I own city, and I'm just saying, to me, when I go see him tomorrow, I don't want to bring the resolution saying, keep your money. So, in all seriousness, though, right? They have a $3 billion projected deficit. $3 billion with a B. And if we look to Washington for assistance, they're calling their budget the skinny budget, which takes about $500 billion out of a state federal budget. Hello? I want you to understand, they're cutting at the federal level, they're scrambling at the state level, and if we limit what the state is going to do, you're going to be finding new and innovative ways to tax your constituents here, just to keep and make ends meet. So let the governor and let the state legislator and let the Senate do their jobs, and let's focus on ours. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate all of the comments and the constructive dialogue of my colleagues. But if you saw me scrambling over here, I'm scrambling to get the data, the numbers, and the facts from Harrisburg so that we can literally know what we're doing here today. And just for the record, I want to start with this. All of the speakers who commented on the negative impact of this tax, I agree with them potentially wholeheartedly, and there was one person who put forth a potential solution that I am willing, and I'm sure many of my colleagues will take him up on. He talked about, he knew that there was a need to plug the $3 billion projected budget deficit that we have in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and he said that he thought a broad-based tax, like a potential increase in the PIT, was something more fitting instead of picking winners and losers as it relates to industries. I want to tell that gentleman that I agree. I will be willing to work with the industry to motivate and inspire our colleagues, particularly those who live in the 5-county area, to help us with a campaign to support a broad-based tax in Harrisburg that is not simply an ask that is coming from Philadelphia. In addition to that, I want to say to Councilman Greenlee, Council Members Jones and Heenan, each of you, I think, hit the hammer on the nail when you talked about current negotiations. I, right now, am holding an analysis of revenue proposals that was conducted not by the Democratic caucus or Republican caucus. It was conducted by the Independent Fiscal Office. And everything that is being proposed, it is not just this, what is being referred to as the tech tax. They're talking about the corporate net income tax, a natural gas severance tax, an insurance premium tax, a sales and use tax, and they also have tax credits here. So there is a litany of proposals, and I'm not sure if today what we would be doing if we wanted to lend our voice to the argument, if we needed to be talking about how a tax in each of these areas would be impacting the city of Philadelphia. So with that being said, I too who am not in support of this tax in particular, but what I am very mindful of is the reality of a $3 billion deficit, the reality that in 5 years, if we don't find a way to generate additional recurring revenue for the school district of Philadelphia, if we listen carefully, we talked about a $700 million projected deficit. We've got no signal that we're going to plug the charter school reimbursement line item. And with that being said, Mr. President, I will be voting no on this resolution today, but it is not, again, because I support the tax. I would much prefer to see a broad-based tax entered into, but as they go into the negotiating stages of this process, again, which I, only had, 10 pre-K years of just watching from afar, I don't want to limit the discussion on anything, and that's for both sides of the aisle. Thank you, Mr. President. If anyone is interested in looking at this analysis of the revenue proposals, so they'll get that this is not the only projected revenue stream, again, that's projected to generate $349 million. All of those other revenue streams were proposed also. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Up.
Thank you very much, Council President. Let me start by saying this. I've introduced resolutions when I disagree with the Trump administration or with Governor Corbett or any other Republican because I represent the citizens of Philadelphia. If every council member who just said they don't like this tax voted for the resolution, then the governor would get a message. It might help him. He needs the guidance. He's going to run for re-election. I'm getting that from this conversation. But for Philadelphia, this tax is very problematic. We lose jobs, we lose taxes, we lose revenues, we lose growth. What happens is exactly what's been described. We don't have money from Harrisburg. We don't have money from the federal government. We're going to rely on ourselves. We need as many jobs, job opportunities as we can have, and this is one of our hottest areas right now. If you look at what's happening, we've built 4 innovation centers: University of Penn, Drexel, Science Center, and Comcast Innovation Center. That has been great for the building trades. It's been great for a lot of things. Those are all tech-related jobs. NBC Universal coming to Philadelphia. The medical devices, the medical health care, post-production film, all of this relates to technology. What I would say is that this tax is difficult to understand, particularly when people don't feel it relates to them. And I believe that the representatives of rural Pennsylvania are making themselves well known. They're saying, listen, this tax don't affect us, so go ahead with this tax. But what I'm saying is Philadelphia has to let the rest of the state know so that they can balance it out, that this tax is very detrimental to our citizens, our economy, and our region. And listen, I was at an event where, Governor Wolf was talking about how much hardship he was getting on a partisan basis on the opioid issue. I said publicly, look, I support the governor, and I will be very happy to support him in his efforts to fund and fight the opioid heroin epidemic. This is an area where I disagree with the governor. Doesn't mean I disagree with him on everything, but this hurts Philadelphia. And so, I do understand all the reasons, and, we're all here as elected officials. I'm very clear that this resolution does, in fact, impact things. It does send a message to the governor. It is an official resolution. I would urge everyone to vote in favor of it and help the governor out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Taubenberger.
Thank you, Council President. As one of the sponsors, I will say very clearly, and being in this body not the longest as many, I'm rather new around here, I know we take positions on things that are not in our realm, but I think it's a good thing. And letting people know where we stand and what is particularly important to Philadelphia, I think is very important. I sit here as a minority candidate or a minority member of council, but I represent all Philadelphia. And when 4 businesses come here asking us to do something, they say that it's not good for their business, it will hurt them, one of which clearly said, if this bill passes on the state level, I'm moving out. And guess what? 15 minutes from here by motor car, you're in another state. I think these folks have taken a sincere amount of their time. They've asked us to do something, and I intend to do that, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm requesting a leave of absence. I will be voting no on this resolution and aye on all amendments, bills, and resolutions going forward. I have to go meet with the Secretary of Transportation, who works for the governor, who's bringing a check to fix a bridge, so we will cross that other bridge when we come to it. Thank you, Mr. President. I need an excuse, not a leave of absence.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Leave shall be granted, and your vote will be reflected in the final tally. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Keona Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to be voting aye on this because we weigh in every single week on the federal government, on the state government, and we add our voice. And I will say, I think our voice is powerful and it does send a message. I've worked too hard in this council to support small businesses and how we promote job creation. And I think this position is consistent with everything we've done historically here. So I'll be voting aye.
Thank you. There are no other speeches. I think we probably should do a voice vote. It appears that it's going to be relatively close. So it has been moved and seconded. Mr. Decker, can you call the roll?
Councilwoman Bass? Councilwoman Blackwell? Councilman Dom? Councilman Green? Councilman Greenlee? Councilman Heenan? Councilman Johnson is voting aye. Councilman Jones is voting nay. Councilman O'Neill? Councilman O? Councilwoman Parker? Councilwoman Keona Sanchez? Councilwoman Reynolds Brown? Councilman Squilla? Councilman Taubenberger? Council President Clark?
No. The ayes are 9. The nays are 7. Resolution 170-584 is adopted. Is my math correct, Mr. Decker? Thank you. Thank you.